If you're a man in your 50s or 60s and you've found yourself drawn to someone significantly younger, I'm not here to tell you it's wrong, and I'm not here to cheer you on either. I'm here to make sure you go in with your eyes open, because the honest data on age gap relationships tells a more complicated story than either the critics or the enthusiasts usually admit. Here's what's actually true. Age gap relationships can work, and they can work well. They can also fail in specific, predictable ways that have nothing to do with love and everything to do with logistics most men never think through in advance. The couples who make it tend to have done a handful of things deliberately, on purpose, before the relationship got serious. The couples who don't make it tend to have skipped every one of them, usually because the early chemistry felt too good to interrupt with hard questions. This video isn't a permission slip and it isn't a warning label. It's the honest checklist most men never get, laid out before the relationship, not after the regret. By the end, you'll know exactly what to actually examine before you're in too deep to examine it clearly. Before anything else, it's worth being honest with yourself about why this particular relationship is pulling at you, because the answer changes everything downstream. There are two very different things that can look identical from the outside but function completely differently underneath. One is genuine connection with a specific person, her mind, her company, the way a conversation with her actually feels, regardless of the number attached to her birth year. The other is what researchers sometimes describe as a response to your own aging, using a younger partner as a way to feel young again, to outrun a mirror you'd rather not look at directly. Both can start a relationship. Only one of them can sustain it. The test here isn't complicated, even if it's uncomfortable. Ask yourself honestly what you're actually drawn to. Is it her, specifically, the things she thinks about, the way she sees the world, the particular person she is? Or is it what being with her makes you feel about yourself, younger, more vital, more like the man you were before life started reminding you otherwise? If it's mostly the second one, that's not a moral failing, it's just useful information, because a relationship built primarily to manage your own feelings about aging tends to collapse the moment it stops doing that job, and it usually stops doing that job faster than either of you expects. There's a related question worth asking too, and it's one men rarely put into words even to themselves. Would you be genuinely interested in this specific person if she were your own age? If the honest answer is no, if what's actually appealing is the age gap itself rather than her, that's worth sitting with before anything gets more serious. A relationship where the age difference is the attraction, rather than a fact about two people who are attracted to each other, is starting from a foundation that has very little to do with her as an actual person, and foundations like that tend to show cracks exactly when the relationship needs them least. There's a version of this worth naming honestly too, because it comes up more than men expect. If part of what's drawing you in is the idea of being seen a certain way by other people, admired for being the man who landed someone significantly younger, that's a different motivation again, and it's worth separating from genuine attraction to her as a person. A relationship functioning partly as a status display tends to reveal itself over time, usually in small ways first, more interest in how the relationship looks from the outside than in how it actually feels from the inside. That's worth catching early, both for her sake and for the eventual health of the relationship itself. Now here's the part almost nobody wants to hear, because it doesn't feel true in the early, exciting stretch of a new relationship. Age gap relationships carry a built-in power imbalance, and pretending it isn't there doesn't make it disappear. It just makes it harder to correct once it's already shaping the relationship's habits. Think about what an older man typically brings into a relationship with a significantly younger woman. More financial stability, usually. More life experience, by definition. More confidence in navigating conflict, disagreements, difficult conversations, simply because he's had more of them. None of that is a character flaw. It's just the mathematics of having lived longer. But it means the starting point of the relationship isn't level, and level isn't something that happens automatically just because both people care about each other. Researchers who study these dynamics keep flagging the same risk. Without deliberate correction, the older, more established partner tends to end up making more of the real decisions, quietly, not through malice, but simply because he's more practiced at making decisions and she's still building that muscle. Where to live? How money gets spent? Which family gets prioritized during the holidays? Each individual choice might seem minor. Over years, they compound into a relationship where one person's preferences have quietly become the default, and the other person's voice has gotten smaller without anyone deciding that on purpose. The correction isn't complicated, but it does require a real intention rather than good feelings alone. It means actively asking for her opinion before offering yours, not after. It means noticing when you're explaining something she already understands, and catching yourself before it becomes a pattern. It means being honest with yourself about whether you're treating her as a full equal or, without meaning to, as someone whose growth you're managing. The men who get this right check themselves on it regularly, not once at the start and then never again. The men who get it wrong usually don't notice they've gotten it wrong until the relationship is already showing the strain of it. There's a specific version of this worth watching for, because it's subtle enough to slip past even a well-intentioned man. It's the difference between sharing your perspective and delivering it as the final word. A man who's lived longer has more reference points, more stories, more hard-won conclusions, and it's tempting, often without noticing, to present those as settled facts rather than one perspective among several worth hearing. The healthier version treats your experience as useful input, not as the automatic answer to every disagreement. If you notice conversations tend to end with your view prevailing more often than hers, regardless of the topic, that's worth examining honestly rather than attributing to simply being right more often. So, quick pause here, because this next part connects directly to a mistake a lot of men make early, assuming that if the chemistry is strong enough, the calendar differences won't matter. They matter. A lot. A woman in her late 20s or early 30s is very likely still building things you've already built. Her career is probably still forming rather than winding down. The question of whether she wants children, and when, might still be genuinely open, in a way it simply isn't for a man in his late 50s or 60s who's already raised a family or decided not to. Her social world is probably still expanding. Yours may have deliberately narrowed to the people who matter most, which we've talked about elsewhere on this channel as one of the healthier things that happens with age. Neither timeline is wrong. They're just not running at the same speed, and pretending otherwise doesn't make the mismatch smaller. This shows up in specific, practical ways that are worth naming directly instead of leaving vague. If she wants children and you've already raised yours, or don't want to start again, that's not a conversation to have later. It's a conversation to have first, honestly, before either of you is emotionally invested enough to avoid it. If your idea of a good weekend is a quiet dinner and hers is a night out with friends she's still actively building a life around, that's not automatically a deal breaker, but it is a difference that needs acknowledging rather than assuming it'll sort itself out. Relationships researchers studying age gap couples point to exactly this kind of mismatch. Differing priorities around children, career timing, retirement, energy levels, as one of the most common sources of friction, more common than the age gap being discussed openly by either partner at the start. There's a version of this mismatch that's easy to miss because it doesn't involve anything as clear-cut as children or careers. It's simply energy, the amount of it, and what each of you wants to do with a free evening. A woman still building her social world may genuinely want a partner who can match her pace some of the time, out late, meeting new people, saying yes to spontaneous plans. A man who's settled contentedly into quieter evenings isn't wrong to want that, and neither is she wrong to want more motion in her life. But pretending the mismatch doesn't exist, or expecting her to simply adopt your pace because it's more convenient, tends to breed a quiet resentment that's harder to name than a disagreement over children, precisely because it never gets discussed directly as its own issue. The honest move here isn't avoiding these conversations because they feel like they might pop the bubble of a good thing. It's having them early, plainly, before the relationship has enough momentum that either of you feels too invested to walk away from an honest answer. A woman who's certain she wants children needs to hear clearly and early whether that's something you're genuinely open to, not something you're hoping she'll change her mind about once she loves you enough. That's not romance. That's setting someone up for a decision she didn't get to make with full information, and it rarely ends well for either person. Here's a piece of this that catches a lot of men off guard, because it has nothing to do with the two of you and everything to do with everyone standing around you. Age gap relationships, particularly ones with a significant span, tend to attract outside judgment, and it comes from more directions than most men expect going in. Your adult children, if you have them, may struggle with a partner closer to their own age than to yours, and that discomfort is worth taking seriously rather than dismissing as something they'll simply get over. Her family may have their own concerns, some fair, some less fair, about your intentions or your timeline together. Friends on both sides may say things, sometimes to your face, more often behind your back, that reveal exactly how they actually see the relationship. This judgment isn't universally deserved, and a lot of it says more about the people delivering it than about the relationship itself. But it's real, it's going to show up, and pretending it won't is setting both of you up to be blindsided by something that was entirely predictable. The couples who weather this well tend to have discussed it directly beforehand, agreeing on how they'll respond when a family gathering gets awkward, how they'll handle a comment from a friend who clearly disapproves, whether they're presenting a united front or letting each person navigate their own family separately. There's a specific version of this worth naming honestly, because it's one of the more common assumptions people make about these relationships, whether it's fair or not. People will wonder, often out loud, whether the relationship is really about connection or about something more transactional, his stability for her youth, in one direction or the other. You can't control what strangers assume. What you can control is whether the relationship itself gives that assumption any real evidence to point to, meaning whether it's actually built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other as full people, or whether, if you're honest with yourself, there's some truth buried in the accusation that would be worth addressing directly instead of getting defensive about. Some of this judgment, worth saying plainly, will come from people who've never actually met her and know nothing about either of you beyond a photo or a passing comment. That version is easier to shrug off, even if it stings in the moment. The harder version comes from people whose opinions you've genuinely valued for years, a close friend, a sibling, someone whose judgment you've trusted through other decisions in your life. When that person raises a real concern, the instinct to get defensive is understandable, but it's worth actually hearing them out before deciding they simply don't understand. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're naming something you've been avoiding looking at directly yourself. Last one, and it's the conversation that gets skipped more than any other on this list, usually because it's the least romantic thing to bring up over dinner. A significant age gap means, on average, that one of you will spend meaningful years as the other's caregiver, and eventually, one of you will grieve the other considerably earlier than either of you might have otherwise expected. That's not a pleasant thing to sit with in the excitement of a new relationship, and it's exactly the kind of thing most couples avoid discussing until a health scare forces the conversation on them anyway, at the worst possible time to be having it for the first time. Interestingly, some research on long-term outcomes actually complicates the doom and gloom version of this story. Studies looking at survival rates have found that men with meaningfully younger partners sometimes show better longevity outcomes than men whose partners are closer to their own age, plausibly linked to the practical benefits of having a partner with more energy and capacity for caregiving as health needs increase later in life. That's a real, documented pattern, not a myth invented to make age gap relationships sound better than they are. But it cuts in a specific direction worth being honest about. It suggests a real benefit for the older partner, which means the harder question is what it means for the younger one, who may end up in a caregiving role years or decades earlier than most of her peers, and who deserves to enter that possibility with clear eyes rather than discovering it by surprise partway through. This is the conversation worth having directly, early, uncomfortable as it is. What does she actually understand about what she might be signing up for, not romantically, but practically, over the coming decades? Is she genuinely at peace with the version of this that includes caregiving years down the road, or is that a reality she hasn't actually let herself think through yet? Because right now everything about the relationship feels too good to interrupt with a conversation this heavy. A man who genuinely respects his partner doesn't let her walk into that reality without making sure she's actually seen it clearly first. That's not pessimism. That's exactly the kind of honesty a real relationship, at any age gap, is supposed to be built on. This isn't a one-time conversation either, worth saying plainly. Circumstances change, health changes, and what felt like an abstract hypothetical in year 2 of a relationship becomes a lived reality by year 15. The couples who navigate this well tend to revisit it periodically, not as a morbid ritual, but as an honest check-in, the same way any couple should periodically check in on finances or long-term plans. The couples who struggle most tend to be the ones who had the conversation once, early, treated it as settled, and then found themselves navigating an actual health crisis with assumptions neither of them had actually confirmed still held. So here's the honest checklist, laid out plainly instead of wrapped in either judgment or false encouragement. Check what's actually drawing you to her, and be honest about whether it's her specifically or what she makes you feel about your own aging. Correct for the power imbalance deliberately, because it exists whether you intend it or not. Have the life stage conversations early, about children, timelines, and priorities, before either of you is too invested to hear an honest answer. Expect outside judgment, and decide together how you'll handle it before it catches you off guard. And have the caregiving and mortality conversation directly, even though it's the least comfortable one on this entire list. None of this means the relationship can't work. Plenty do, genuinely and well, when both people go in with their eyes open instead of their eyes closed. What determines which category a relationship falls into usually isn't the age gap itself. It's whether the two people involved were willing to have these conversations honestly, early, before the excitement of something new made it easier to avoid them.